Now the next line or so of answer 94 mentions other forms of idolatry. Sorcery is mentioned next. Witchcraft or wizardry. Which means, amongst many things, you don't join in at the Ouija board if someone brings it out in the sixth form common room, or anywhere else for that matter. Because these things are not harmless fun or just a laugh. It is the soft edge of sorcery. Soothsaying is a branch or aspect of sorcery which involves speaking. Soothsaying. Sooth, forsooth, is like truth. Truth speaking. Kind of an ironic name for it. But in which the one caught up in aspects of witchcraft claims to speak the truth, a word obtained through some esoteric rite or activity, like a seance. A word comes from the dead, although it may just be that there's a wee button that they pressed on the desk, or the person's double jointed and they can crack their the sort of knuckle with their toe, hear the knocking there and fool everybody. Fortune telling. Soothsaying. And then, as a sort of catch-all, superstition. 3 S's. Sorcery, and then soothsaying, an aspect of sorcery, and then a sort of catch-all, superstition. The number 13. So unlucky, you know. Black cats walking under a ladder. Seeing a certain number of magpies. And all that nonsense. Having to leave a house by the same door that you came in through. And in various countries there's some commonalities between the superstitions, but they vary. Foolish superstition that brings people into bondage. If you go into their house and you go out a different door, the poor souls in their darkness are thinking something bad is going to happen to them. This is nonsense. And that sort of stuff is especially prevalent among certain groups of people. Roman Catholicism, for instance, in our own culture, paganism in our own culture, Chinese religion. In short, that sort of thing is there where there is least conception of God's sovereign and almighty providence. See, if you believe with Lord's Days 9 and 10 and 11 and so, that there's one great God who made everything, and He sovereignly governs everything according to His eternal purpose, then black cats aren't going to bring you luck, or walking under a ladder isn't going to bring you bad luck, because there is no such thing as luck. There's the sovereign God who does His will in heaven and on earth, and none can say unto Him, what doest thou? Or stay His hand. Yeah. But whenever that conception goes up into the vacuum, floods luck and chance and fortune, which is part of the departure in our own society. You're going to see probably more gambling dens. The national lottery brought in when the remnants of Protestant biblical Christianity were removed away, and then unlike the more Roman Catholic and liberal countries in Europe, then nobody can see anything wrong with it, and we have a national lottery. Luck and chance, which fits perfectly with evolutionism. Because if we come from luck and chance, the cosmic bang and all that stuff, then it's the very fibre of society and life. So why shouldn't we gamble? Luck, chance, ghosts, charms, reading the stars. What has God enjoined in the first commandment? That as sincerely as I desire the salvation of my soul, I avoid and flee from all idolatry, sorcery, soothsaying, and superstition. That's not only ridiculous folly, but sinful, wicked, because of denial of the absolute sovereign Lord and Creator. And then it goes on to talk about invocation of saints or any other creatures, and the chief form of this here is, of course, Roman Catholicism. And the goddess that they call Mary is very different from the godly woman in the Bible, and we honour as the mother follower of the Lord Christ. And of course you have all the other saints. And historically, the saints which are prayed to in that apostate church are just replacements of the local deities and the pantheon of the pagans. So whereas Poseidon took care of you and you prayed to him when you were making a sea journey, now you've got the Roman Catholic god or goddess or patron saint who cares for you when you're in a ship. Paganism dressed up, mutton as lamb. And the first commandment forbids this, because when we have Jehovah as our God, we only pray to him. And Jesus Christ is the only mediator between God and man. And somebody might say at this, well, all those things aren't a big deal. That's just ministers, and they go on, they talk about these sorts of things. It's not very serious. Don't really do much harm, these things. Well, our confession is, this is our creed, and it's right to him. Avoid and flee. That's serious. And that we are to avoid and flee these things as earnestly and sincerely as we desire the salvation of our soul. What do you think about the eternal torments of hell? No big deal. Doesn't really matter. Well, our creed teaches us that these things must be detested and shunned with the same sort of sincerity as we would flee and avoid hell. That's what it says. Do you desire to fellowship with God and Jesus Christ in the new world? Use that same sort of sincere desire to avoid and flee the idolatry. That's Lord's Day 34 for us. For our children too. We instruct them in these things and warn them against idolatry. Moving to the positive part, again it's striking that the first word used in the Heidelberg Catechism's positive statement of what the first commandment requires is learn. What does God command us in the first commandment? Well, I avoid and flee all these things. And then it adds positively, and learn rightly to know the only true God. Learn. Interesting word. The first commandment positively means you learn. You learn about God. That's the first commandment. You learn rightly to know God. This means that living as a Christian involves learning. Lifelong learning for old and young. Keeping the 10 Commandments requires learning. Because the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods before me, means that we learn rightly to know the only true God and reject everything else as idolatry. This means that rightly expressing our gratitude to the Lord who saves us from eternal destruction and grants us life and peace in Christ, gratitude means you learn. And so according to the first commandment, the church is a school. That's where you go to learn. And of course the church is more than that. It's a house. Temple, but it's also a school. It's a special sort of school. It's a school which teaches the knowledge of the true and living God. It's the pillar and ground of the truth. And if that's what the church is from this Lord's Day, then Christians are scholars or students at God's school, the church, and you never graduate. Never. Even if you're 100 and still living a course, you never get beyond the need for the church, which is God's school.